The other day below one of my videos I saw a comment and it said there's no good middle ground in the industry regarding the size of your business, meaning that if you're in between a small business and a large business, it's a miserable place to be. There's not much money, it's not a good business. And I thought the comment was so spot on that I wanted to record a video about it, because unless you've been through it, you wouldn't instinctively know that there's truth in that statement. And there's this general idea that I can grow my business slowly over time and all will be well and I'll make really good money along the way. But what I have found to be the case, and I don't believe this is only true in our industry, is that that middle ground between being really small and having, being out there on a truck with the crew, or being out there on a truck with a crew again, but maybe having one extra truck where it's kind of running part-time, maybe full-time. I'm going to call that the small business. And then everything else until you get to a few $1,000,000 or $1,000,000. I don't know exactly where the number is, but I'd say about $1.5 million. To me, that's the middle ground. And I'm sure if I thought about it, that I could better define that range. But there's also a middle ground, let's say it this way, the worst part of that middle ground, in my opinion, is that $200,000 in revenue to $500,000-$600,000 range. Maybe a little bit higher than that, depending on whether you're maintenance or design build. Because in a design build business, your revenue will sound more impressive than a full maintenance business that's just selling time, because you have a lot of material costs built in that you're essentially just reselling materials to your client. My point here is that if you look at the numbers of the industry, the vast majority, something like 80%, will never break $500,000 a year in annual revenue. They will plateau there and they'll get stuck. And one of the reasons that they get stuck is when they were out there on a truck, on a crew, and again, maybe they had a second truck or maybe they didn't, but let's focus on the idea they had one truck. They're on that crew, they're billing themselves out, they're billing out the one or two individuals on the truck with them, and they're making money. They're making the money that they're getting paid. So let's say they're billing $30 an hour or $25 an hour, hopefully more than that, but let's say that's what they're doing. They're personally making not quite $30 an hour because they've got expenses, but their expenses are pretty minimal when you have one truck. And then they've got another individual and another individual that hopefully they're billing out at a correct hourly rate, and they're skimming some amount off that individual. And I mean skimming in a good way, as in they're paying that person $15 an hour, they're billing them out at $30. The spread, the other $15 that's left over, is paying for truck, insurance, materials, things of that sort, and then there's a little bit of money left over every hour for them. And so at the end of the day, maybe they're making $45, $50, $60 a man hour if they're running a decent business when they're by themselves. And don't get caught up too much in my numbers, but I'm making a point. So they're making $60 a man hour hypothetically times 30 billable hours a week, and that's what their salary is. But then they start to grow their business, and they get a second truck and the insurance, and then they need an office or a shed, then they need some office help, then they need an assistant out in the field, and they keep piling on the expenses, and potentially they never got their pricing quite right, meaning they never got their estimating quite right, and their margins just slip. And then one day they can't be in the field at all because they're working 80 hours a week now, trying to keep up with everything and generate revenue. So they have to get out of the field. So no, they're no longer generating any revenue for the company. They have to hire someone to replace them that maybe works at 80% efficiency as compared to them, and they have to pay this individual. And suddenly there's even less money available for them to take home, and there's not really any money to grow the business. So what ends up happening is, in this low hundreds of thousands of dollar range, you're not making a lot of money to take home because you need to leave some money in the business to buy trucks and equipment and materials and market and do all those things so that you can grow, because if you never do those things, you won't grow, while you're taking on more and more cost. And you need the money you can get from the business. You have no money to put into the business to grow, and everything's piling onto you. You're responsible for everything. You're working crazy hours, and oftentimes you're not delegating. You're not handing things off to other people. You're not hiring somebody to work the office phones fast enough. Then you're not hiring someone to be an operational assistant fast enough. You're not getting these jobs off of you. And it's especially true for those in the landscape industry, because they're bidding the jobs, they're estimating the jobs, they're managing the projects, and they feel that they have to, because so many things could go wrong that could have that job go south on them, that they have to be paying attention to that. And it's more difficult to find a person to replace you and do that landscaping side of the business, and so they get stuck. And that's what happens. The most business owners up until this $500,000 range who never break it are stuck. They have very little money. They're taking home some money, but it's not great money. Too many things are on their plate. They aren't delegating enough, and they know they need a person, like an office person, and they know they need this other person, but they can't afford them because they don't have enough money, and they don't know what to do. And it just feels like the industry's terrible, the business is terrible. There's lots of solutions to this, because there's a ton of companies that get past it. But I'm not going to go into the details of all the solutions, but this is a problem to be aware of. And I will give you a hint. A lot of the solutions have to do with making sure that your pricing is correct, but it also has to do with realizing this point before you ever get there and making the right decision so you can get past this plateau point of around $500,000. So we could call that whole range of when it was you and a truck until you're $1 million and a half dollars, somewhere in that range, we could call that the middle ground. Because during the middle ground, you're investing, you're putting money back into the company, you're hiring people, you're getting, as I keep saying, getting things off your plate. And if you're not doing those things, you will forever get stuck. So in my opinion, you have a decision. You either want to be small with one truck, and that's going to be your life. And I see a lot of people comment on YouTube and say, that's the way to run a company. I couldn't disagree more. That is the worst way to run a company, because it's all on you again. If you ever get hurt, ever get sick, something really bad happens, you ever get in a truck and you only have one and you can't replace it for 3 weeks, you've just lost your business and you're going to go get a job. A real business is one where you grow it to the point where you have other people doing the work of the business and you're making money even if you don't show up to work tomorrow. And that's what I would encourage everyone to go for. That's a real business. And that's true in every single industry. But the majority of people don't build real businesses and aren't thinking that way. And that's the point of the business, the video here, is I'd highly encourage you to think that way. I'd highly encourage you to educate yourself and read and hang around other people that are building that type of business, because that's where you want to go. That is, at the end of the day, the dream. And you don't have to go to 5 million or 10 million. You don't have to go big, but you do need to get big enough that you have enough money that you can hire people to help you do the work. You can hire people to help you carry the ball. You can hire people to cover for you when you're not there. That's where you want to go. And when you get there, then you're sort of out of the middle ground to some degree. I could go into a 2-hour talk about why maybe that isn't even the case. But once you can bring in enough money to hire people in the office, an operational manager, and outsource some of your marketing and do all these other activities, you've got out of that place that traps the majority. So as you build your business, if you've not made it to the other side where you have those people on your team, going into this, know that it's going to be a little rough and rocky for a period of time. And your number one goal is to get things off your plate as fast as you can. Your number one goal is to live frugal enough so that you can get first an office person to help you with the phones and all the miscellaneous, then an operational assistant type of person so you can keep selling while they make sure the crews and the techs are getting out the door, that all the parts runs are happening, all the material deliveries are happening, and all those little miscellaneous field things are happening. They can even look at projects and estimate them, small jobs. There's a lot this person can do. Those are your first 2 hires generally, after you keep staffing up the field operations, meaning you hire more techs and more crews and crew leaders and such. But if you know in advance that that's what's coming, then you can be very aware of it and quickly react and hire the people you need, and you won't get trapped where one day you wake up and you're doing $450 a year in gross revenue, you're not taking home a lot of money, you have no money to hire, and you feel completely stuck and you hate the business. Now, for many, they get to that place and they say, man, this industry sucks, there's everybody's underbidding jobs, it's a terrible industry, there's no people, blah, 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 blah. And the real reality is they're just burned out and they can't look at the problem with clarity and they can't see their options. It happens to all of us. And so then what they do is they say, you know what, I'm going to start a business in power washing or window cleaning or pest control or some house cleaning, whatever the other service is, because I got a buddy over there who's making money. And so they move to the next thing and they build that business exactly the same way, and they hit the bottleneck in that industry and they get stuck at that plateau. And forever they bounce from one thing to the next, not ever being able to break out. And so the key is to know again what's coming and know how to get things off your plate, and know that you've got to get key people onto your team. They don't have to be expensive, but you got to get key people on your team so you're not wearing all the hats of your business. And for those that do that, many of them sell right past the $500,000 mark. Many of them sell right out of that in-between period that's miserable where you're not making much money. And when they're on the other side, they're the ones that say, this is an awesome industry. There is money in this industry, and I can see the hope and possibility of it. So read a little bit more about that. Ask others that have done it, how they got through that period, and be determined to go find a solution to get through the most challenging part of the business. You'll be thrilled that you did on the other side. Good luck.